Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris
Tired of
Dowhouse,
hearing about Mr. Pointless in fantasy.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. We're back. We haven't been here since before the Super Bowl. It's good to be back on the mic, kicking off a brand new season here in 2025, Operation Domination. Thanks for tuning in wherever you are listening and checking out our videos on the Fantasy Football Advice Net. That's at FF Advice Net now on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification. Get notified whenever we have new content available for you. I'm your host, Dan Mader. If it's your first time joining the show, I got my partner on the left of me, or I'm all mixed up because I'm looking at a mirror image here. So I got Adam LaRue on whichever side that you're looking at this thing on. And then you got Chris D here. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend. You've seen him on the Baseball Straight to the Chase podcast. Here to do a little football, Mr. Chase Thornton. What's up, gentlemen? How we been with this little downtime? It was only like 3 weeks, but it felt like a hell of a lot longer than that.
I feel like we're officially into the new season, Dan, where like we have the first, that draft kind of taste with the combine. We've got free agency right around the corner. We've seen trades. I feel like football in the offseason has begun officially.
Yeah, football's all year, man. It's just all year. We had that little 3-week window, but even then, I don't know about you guys, and hopefully you did the same thing I did, but I spent my entire time scouting prospects and getting ready for pre-combine, and now we have post-combine. But before we get to the combine, we had a lot of breaking news over the past few weeks and some big names that we got to get to. All right, so what we have here, we're going to start off talking about the Rams. And, there was a big thing during the combine. Matthew Stafford, was he staying? Was he going? Would they figure out a way to make it work? And we'll kick it off with that. Now, I will say this before we get into our reactions. There's still no real details definitively on the contract that are available. We have some roundabout numbers, but as far as the minute details, I don't have that for you. But all we do know is Stafford is locked in. It sounds like it's going to be at least a 2-year deal here for Stafford. So not just this season, but probably 2026 as well. So Stafford staying. Let's go with Adam first. Adam, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, it was always weird to me that this was such an issue. I mean, it seems like it would have made sense for all parties. The Rams were hot, the second half of last season. They were a really solid team. And one that was, I think, successfully kind of resetting after they had gone all in for that Super Bowl a handful of years ago. It seemed like they were successfully resetting. They got really young and talented on the defensive side of the ball, and it seemed like they were kind of doing similar things on offense as well. So for them to be like brinking on a reset, it just seemed like really odd timing. So I'm glad that they've at least brought Stafford back. I'm hoping that they're able to do the same with Cooper Kupp. Obviously, there was some weird things going on with him at the end of the season, so we'll see on that front. But at least Stafford, I'm definitely really glad is back because he played some really good ball last season.
Chris, when you look at this situation, what's your fantasy reaction to all of this? Stafford stays in the Rams. What does that mean for Nakua, Kyron Williams, maybe Jordan Whittington if Cooper Kupp wasn't to stay? What do you take?
Well, I think it's pretty definitive in my opinion. Maybe things could twist, but I think Cooper Kupp's going to be on his way out. The contract, the things that have been said, I think it's going to be moving on for him. And to that point, Dan, I think you've heard a lot why the Rams might have moved on from Matthew Stafford was they want to kind of transform what their offense has been about. I think Puka's going to be fine with Matthew Stafford as long as he has the guy that he likes out there. He's going to target the shit out of him. We also know that Kyron Williams has been a guy who's been a steadfast back, and that backfield has been very productive for them. We know that they want to kind of lighten his carry, so I don't think Matthew Stafford necessarily being there or not being there is going to change either one of those guys. What I think what you're going to see though is going to be interesting to see are they content with a Jordan Whittington or a Rod Robinson as a second receiver, which they've kind of struggled to feature over the last few years, or are they looking for something to kind of upgrade or even do more two tight end sets in this offense? So I think it's not really going to change a lot for Puka or Kyron. But I think Matthew Stafford will still be a guy that maybe the volume won't be what we used to.
Well, not even just the volume, because I'll jump in there. I mean, Stafford's been pretty irrelevant for at least one quarterback leagues for fantasy purposes anyway. I mean, the guy was QB 18 in 2023 on a points per game basis. He was QB 26 last year amongst qualified quarterbacks on a QB basis. So this isn't so much that we're excited about Stafford. This is way more to do about how excited we are about Puka Nacua and these other guys. Chase, before I move on to my Nakua take, do you have anything reaction to this you want to add?
No, I mean, I agree. I think this is their best, I think for the Rams, for the periphery Rams, I'll call them, it's the best option that could have happened. I mean, they're not breaking in a new quarterback. I know there was Aaron Rodgers would love to go out there. Yeah, that would have been a complete cluster, I think, in my opinion. I like the fact that Stafford's back. I like that for Nakua. I like what it means for their running backs. And hey, yeah, they struggled a little bit past the ball without Cooper Kupp in there in terms of, finding that other guy to throw to. I'm still not buying into any Los Angeles tight end for that matter. I mean, we all know my stance on Tyler Higbee, but I don't like any of the rest of them over there either. But yeah, I like Stafford coming back. I think that's going to help out Puka Nacua. I think Kupp is gone. I agree with Chris there. We'll see where he ends up. I think he still has a little bit left in the tank, but he's definitely not the fantasy superstar. No matter where he goes, he's not the fantasy superstar that we all have known and loved for the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, well, here's one to kick it off to, and I'll see what you guys think and chime in, but this is going to be my big take to kick off the 2025 season, and that is I have Puka Nacua as my wide receiver 1 overall. Now that we have officially know Matthew Stafford is going to be the starting quarterback. Now, this is partly due to the idea that we haven't had a receiver go back-to-back 1 overall since Antonio Brown. It just simply has not happened. So it's part of it. So it'd be hard, I think, for Jamar Chase to do it, even though he's fantastic, even though he's with Joe Burrow. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But Nakua was second from week 7 to 17, when he came back from his injury. Second to only Chase at that point. He had a 34% target share with Cooper Kupp on the field, still getting 24%, even though his performance had been down, as not nothing. So even with a target earner on the team, Nakua was being targeted beyond elite. Like 28 to 30 is elite. 34 is beyond elite. We're talking like Nakua. I think Malik Neighbors got there at one point, but when you add that in, I'm looking at Nakua. I think he's going to have a CeeDee Lamb-like season from 2 years ago, where he's just going to get fed all the volume, but he's an efficient receiver who can score, and the entire passing network is just going to funnel through him. That's what I'm anticipating here. If you want to argue with me and saying, like, well, his knee injury is concerning, he's been a little bit banged up last season, and that's why I don't necessarily put him at number 1, I'm not going to argue with you too strongly over that. But I do think you take the injury out of it, I don't see why this guy's not going to be the wide receiver 1 overall. Anybody want to retort to that?
I think it's a little strong. I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from. The target share, of course, if he got that target share through a whole season, if he's going to project it, he's going to shatter all kinds of records. Having said that, he's been healthy since when? In college, he was banged up. His first 2 years, he's been banged up. And I think is something that you have to kind of take into consideration.
He started all 17 games in 2023. His rookie year, he did not miss any time at all. So I thought that was important to point. To your point, yes, he did get banged up in college. He missed 6 games this past season. But he did get through an entire healthy year and rookie year, which is why I think there is some argument to be had that he could potentially do that again.
Now, just to finish off real quick, where I think you do have a chance for that to happen, though, Dan, is he make the Ahmad St. Brown jump elite? Because touchdowns have to also increase. He's had 6 touchdowns back-to-back seasons with all those target share you're talking about. So that's where St. Brown, we saw him make that huge leap to become in a discussion of that receiver 1. Can Puka do that as well? Like I said, I think his offense is trending into be a little bit more run physical and kind of, they're going to utilize Puka, don't get it twisted. But I just wonder if he's going to be able to sustain throughout the entire season with his injury history as well to be at receiver 1.
Well, Cooper Kupp was a big red zone target. If he's gone, then that could be a big opening for Nakua. Speaking of Cooper Kupp, let's go into that conversation because he is somebody right now. The GM came out today and said the least likely option is that Cooper Kupp returns to the Rams. So our question here today we're going to try to answer is Cooper Kupp traded or released? Chase, let's go to you first on this one.
I think there's several teams out there maybe that could benefit from trading for him. I haven't looked at necessarily dug into his contract situation to figure out, how it's going to affect and if he's cut, if he's designated as a post June 1st released, all of that kind of thing. One place I would like to see him go if he went somewhere, I think he might be a nice veteran safety blanket type option for a guy like Drake May up in New England. I would really like to see them have somebody like that May can grow with. I made the comment 2 years ago with Bryce Young down in Carolina that I liked the idea of Adam Thielen down there helping him out, always being that veteran presence who is going to be where you need him to be when you need him to be there and help a young quarterback grow. So I'd like to see something kind of like that there. I would like to see him somewhere like that, though, with a young quarterback to help out in terms of, where I think he would be the best fit NFL-wise. Fantasy-wise, is that going to be a giant jump for him? I don't know. New England hasn't necessarily been a cradle or a hotbed of fantasy-relevant wide receiver play, no matter who's been the quarterback there. But that's one place, that's one destination I wouldn't mind seeing him go.
Well, and Adam, I'll kick this to you. So first of all, trade or release, because Chase took the Miss America way out and decided he didn't want to answer the actual question. It's all good. That's right. You waved down there at the bottom. But so first, trade or release, and then do you think Cooper Kupp has anything left?
I don't know that he's going to be the Cooper Kupp that we've seen, but I do think he has something left to offer. I think he's a big body who's going to be at the right place at the right time. I think he understands where he can sit down. I don't know that he's going to be necessarily a man beater at this point in his career, but I think he can find spots in zone, for example. And again, I just think he understands the game well enough to do that. From a release or trade perspective, I do think he's going to get released. We're talking a 20+ million cap hit this year and next year, and one that the Rams can get out of relatively easily. There's always the opportunity for him to get traded and restructured, but realistically, I think this is a scenario where he gets cut, and we're talking about him getting signed by a team like the Ravens, for example, is a team that I think would be super interesting. I actually think obviously, he's not Mark Andrews. He's not a tight end. But I think that role, in terms of being the safety blanket for Lamar Jackson, would be really enticing for him. I think there's other similar situations. The Steelers, for example, I think they need someone who can be consistent so they're not in such of a box. That would suck for him, for Cooper Kupp owners. But for the Steelers, right, they're getting they can only throw the ball, chuck it up to Cooper Kupp. They need to consistently move the chains throwing the ball to be effective as an offense. And that would be a way to do it, to get someone that you can rely on underneath.
I think you just hurt Chris's feelings on that one.
It would hurt my feelings, but for the Steelers, you have to agree it's a net benefit, right? Like that. If I'm the Steelers, I look to make that move. If I'm Cooper Kupp, absolutely not. But what are you gonna do?
I just feel Arthur Smith getting his hands on Cooper Kupp, we'd never see him again, Adam. For me, Dan, real quick for that one, I would love to see him on the Texans. They have the coaching staff they just brought it over. The offensive coordinator has familiarity with Cooper Kupp. I think he'll fit in as that tandem role with Nico Collins on the second receiver as Dale kind of recovers the next 2 years. Stephon Diggs can move on. They have easy. They can kind of plug his money in. Stephon Diggs kind of played that role as that underneath guy, as Adam talked about. So I think, to me, that would be one of the better fits.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, Chris. I think he does have something left. I mean, we don't know how healthy he was down the stretch, right? And we can make the arguments to say, look, you're playing. We have to judge you as if you're healthy. That's all fine. From weeks, again, 8 to 17, because he returned a week later after Nakua, and once he went down earlier in the week or early in the year, he was wide receiver 32 on a points per game basis, and again, a 24% target share. So it's somebody who still could be a target earner. He was at least a wide receiver 3, and we'll see if he can get going again. And Chris, kind of to your point, I have him, his best fit a Rams OC, maybe replacing Godwin in Tampa Bay, something along those lines. If that were to happen, kind of makes some sense to me. Just to clarify, his cap hit is $29 million this year, which is a big reason why the Rams want to try to get out from under this if they possibly can. But I think he's got something, but he's not going to be. When we talk about Cooper Kupp come this summer, and just in a redraft fashion, we're not going to be talking about a guy who we're taking in the first top 3 rounds anymore. This is going to be a PPR guy who maybe we take a shot on later on. But let's move on here. So we want to talk a little bit about, of course, Deebo Samuel being traded to the Washington Commanders for a 5th round pick. And there's a lot of NFL and fantasy fallout here on this one. I know. I'll save my opinions for last. Don't you guys worry. We'll get there. So I want to go back here. I want to go back to Chase a little bit. So when Deebo Samuel gets traded for a 5th rounder to Washington, a lot of people reacted to that. What was your reaction to that?
Well, I forget who it was. I saw somebody on Twitter that said, I continue to be, I continue to be proven. It continues to be proven that I have no idea what the value of an actual draft pick is anymore in the NFL. Because at first glance you want to think, well, Deebo Samuel, he's been kind of a star. He's been a good player for them, and a 5th round pick doesn't seem like a whole hell of a lot. And it's such an unknown by the time you get to that point in the draft. But when you look at his health history and the way things have been going there, I mean, yeah, I guess a 5th round pick makes some sense there. It didn't shock me that they moved on from him. With everything that's been going on there, they kind of a little bit of a soft reset maybe in their receiving core there. But I like the idea of him as a compliment in Washington to Scary Terry. I like that move there a lot. From Washington's point of view, I think it was a no-brainer. Yeah, bring the guy in. He doesn't have to be the man. He can be, like I said, the compliment. They won't, I don't think, be relying on him as much in the backfield over there. So I think that he, that bodes well possibly for his health, so he won't be banged up. I liked the move. I liked the move on both sides in terms of, like I said, getting out from underneath it in San Francisco, but also bringing in a nice compliment in that pass game. Somebody that another toy for Jaden Daniels there. It makes me like him even more going into next year.
So Adam, to follow up with that, did you look at this as a situation where, hey, Jaden Daniels, he wins big. He wins big on this one. Is that something you saw in this setup, or is this something where it's like, yeah, you got better, but I don't know if this does much for you at the end of the day?
I lean towards the second. I'm there's a bunch of ways this could go. I candidly, it's like, all right, you were out of shape last season. That's the reality of the situation. You were. You're now 29 years old. It becomes increasingly more difficult to get back into shape as you age. Not to say you cannot do it. If you do it, I think this can be a really big win for the Commanders. But I personally, given his injury history, given who he has been, I'm just going to bet against it, to be honest with you. I think he is someone who, due to the nature of this offense, they're going to get the ball out quickly. They're going to get the ball out short. They're going to take the easy completions, and that bodes well for what he is going to be capable of doing. But like, let's face facts. He was not necessarily the most consistent catching the ball and getting open even underneath at periods last season. So I'm not exactly sure how much this is going to help. I think that there's a chance he can be a yards after contact, yards after catch demon for the Commanders. It's certainly a possibility. But I would be, just as easily not shocked if this is a flame out situation where Deebo's just not very relevant come next offseason.
Yeah, just to give some like stats here, Deebo had a 19% target share. That was the lowest since his rookie season. He complained constantly about having less opportunities. He only had 3 less opportunities in 2024 as he did in 2023. So he had his 8.3 yards after catch per reception, which is the lowest he had since his rookie season. He had 3.2 yards per carry, which was his lowest in his career. It was just inefficient across the board. Now, Chris, we could talk about, was it the pneumonia? Was it the ribs? Was it the calf? But I feel like when you talk about all those things with Deebo, well, that kind of comes with the Deebo package. Maybe not pneumonia, but the rest of it, him missing a handful of games, that comes with it. And let's not forget, he was a fat tubby lub at the end of the year here. The Adams point of not being able to get back in shape. So I don't know. Do you think he has anything left?
I do, Dan. I think the only chance he had to kind of show that he has something left, I think, went down for him. This is the perfect fit, I think, for Deebo Samuel. Look, Adam, he's not thrown. Jalen Daniels was throwing to Zach Ertz, Quentin Zacchaeus, Dami Brown. Go through the list of guys he was throwing to and how horrible they were, but they were getting yards and targets. So all you have to do is give some of those targets to Deebo consistently. I think this makes Kingsbury's offense easily flow. They can continue to miss directions. They can continue to kind of use jet sweep actions and Jaden in different ways they've been utilizing them. I think for Deebo part, we know, Dan, you're as a 49er fan, you're lucky as hell that you got something for him. But having said that, Deebo's motivated. Deebo does try to play. He can show out, and he has 1 year to be motivated to try to get his contract, to try to show out for this 1 year. After next year, long term, I don't want to part of Deebo Samuel. But for this year, I think this is the position for him to kind of shine. Everybody's going to give him all his kudos all season long. He'll eat himself out of the league next year. But this year, I think that you have a good thing for Deebo and a great situation for him to take advantage of the Kingsbury offense. And I think Jaden actually buys himself an extra year as well from getting exposed.
I do agree that this is the best fit Deebo possibly could have landed into, but I think it's, to Adam's point, it's harder to get back in shape as you get older. And this is a guy we've had to question his work ethic. He's going to have to prove it, plain and simple. I'm going to want no parts of Deebo Samuel next season. He's been on a downward drift ever since 2021, and he's had multiple opportunities where he should have been motivated and could have been motivated. And he'll do it for a gamer here, but he has not been able to put together an entire season since 2021.
Dan, let me ask you this question back, because I like I said, I think you're not throwing to Zach Ertz is going to be just get 8 yards different ways, whatever, but you're still going to throw to Deebo. My question for you is, does this affect Terry McLaurin? Because that's a guy that I would be concerned about fantasy-wise going into next year and for the rest of the panel. Terry McLaurin to me is a guy that kind of had to be schemed and made sure that we didn't forget about him week in, week out for that Washington offense. With Deebo, who likes to bark, as we talked about, demanding the ball sometimes, is that something that you have any concerns about?
The Deebo edition doesn't concern me about Terry McLaurin. The fact that he had a ridiculous amount of touchdowns for his expectation based off of his volume is what scares me about Terry McLaurin having regression next season. So whether Deebo is on the field or not, it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, because when you look at Zacchaeus, Noah Brown, Diami Brown, they combined for about 160 targets and 1,200 yards. So here's what I will say about Deebo is that even in a down season like he had last year, he still accounted for about 70% of what those three guys pretty much all put together anyway. And I just think this is an offense that may just not feature a third wide receiver, or at least not in a productive way. They might be out in the field running the treadmill, but that's about it. So I don't think Deebo affects Terry McLaurin. I think the fact that he's due for touchdown regression this season based on his usage last season is more of the concern I would have for Terry McLaurin. Let's switch over to the 49ers side. And I want to get Chase in here. Chase, when you look at now, okay, so Brandon Aiyuk coming off an ACL. You have Ricky Pearsall, who showed some flashes late in the season. Maybe he can start to become something. Juwan Jennings showed out. He was the one who stepped up when Aiyuk got hurt and Deebo was not performing. And, of course, George Kittle, because of the touchdowns, finished as the tight end 1 overall. Christian McCaffrey may be back. With Deebo out of the picture, let's make it simple. Who's the biggest winner of the fantasy outputs for the 49er players?
I'm trying to figure who's the bigger winner between my guy Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, I think. I mean, Aiyuk had already taken over as the alpha wideout in that when he was healthy in that offense. He was already there, and he's going to fill that slot if and when he comes back. Juwan Jennings, you mentioned, showed out. He's a guy that I've had my eye on. I've liked him. I've got him across a board in my dynasty leagues. I've been jumping on him wherever I could up until last year, and now it's a lot harder to acquire him. I like what he brings to the table. I wasn't a big Pearsall guy going into last season. But you're right. He did play well towards the end of the season. For me, if I'm looking at it, I think Jennings probably would be the big winner if I was coaching that team, but I'm not coaching them. They may like Pearsall better. I think those two win clearly, flat out. Like you said, Kittle's due for some touchdown regression next year.
I actually have Kittle as the big winner here. Kittle to me is the big winner. Look, Kittle
role is possibly, yeah.
Kittle always, because this is how I looked at it. Kittle always goes off when at least either Aiyuk or Deebo, one of them's out. Now, Pearsall might emerge, and I think we saw the best of Jauan Jennings last season. I don't think he can necessarily duplicate that or is that type of player. I think he's a good player in his role of what he does. But what we see is that George Kittle consistently gets targeted in the red zone. And yes, I expect McCaffrey in the running game to be better in the red zone this season, but he will consistently get targeted in the red zone and consistently get targeted, more importantly, week to week, especially with the fact that you're dealing with Aiyuk having to work his way back from the ACL. Even if he is cleared in September, he's not going to be Brandon Aiyuk probably until November. So to me, George Kittle being able to maintain, like, hey, we're talking Brock Bowers, Trey McBride is that tight end one. Well, George Kittle gets to stay in that conversation, or at least the conversation of it. He's rounding out the top three, interview like two of the younger guys. That's what I took out of it. Adam, who's your big winner for this one?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think it's Kittle, and I think to an extent, you mentioned the running game there. I think, look, it's hard to lose as McCaffrey in this situation, right? Given what this past year was, I think anything is progress. But, I mean, it definitely is a pretty strong sign that they need Christian McCaffrey. So, as long as he's there, he's certainly going to be relied upon, which I think is something that I had any doubts about. But definitely something that is more or less guaranteed at this juncture. But yeah, I think between him and Kittle, like those are the guys who I think are going to be leaned on the most.
Yeah, I tend to. Chris, is there any other winners you have here on the San Francisco side?
I think Ricky Pearsall is the winner, guys. I mean, look, they had a role for him. His problem was he didn't know where to line up all the time. He didn't know always where he should be on, what was his motion or not. But they had a play they wanted to utilize him for. They have him in mind when they were kind of moving on in their minds from Deebo moving forward. So I think Ricky Pearsall is going to be a guy that has easily be converted into that Deebo Samuel role, but also a guy that you can see be utilized in the slot as well. Runs a lot better patterns, I think, can attack the ball better in the air as well. So I think, I absolutely think Kittle is one of the winners of the game. I think Kittle is going to continue to be a stud because we know if he's allowed to run patterns, then he produces. But the other guy, I think, like I said, Ricky Pearsall is a guy that I think they have high hopes for, and the contract is pretty low. And they're going to need some of those moving forward. So I think that's the guy who's one of the big winners.
Well, speaking of, because we wanted to talk about two other trade possibility rumors have been out there a little bit. And we'll start with the Aiyuk side since we're talking about San Francisco anyway. So John Lynch came out and said that he's listening to offers for Brandon Aiyuk. Now, as somebody who follows the 49ers closely, I want to point out that John Lynch literally says this about every player every single freaking offseason. Now, I'm not saying that to poo-poo the idea that Brandon Aiyuk might actually be being talked about in trades. I'm just saying I think people are putting too much stock into the comments that John Lynch made during the combine. But let's have a little fun, shall we? So, what do we think about the possibility? Let's just focus on the possibility of Brandon Aiyuk actually being traded this season. Whoever wants to jump in.
I think it's silly, to be honest with you. This is a rehab season for Brandon Aiyuk. This is not a season in which, hey, look, next season, sure. But, like, this is one where is he going to be ready to start the season? Joining a new team, he's going to have to learn a playbook when he's not healthy to, like, really even do anything. Like, I think it would be silly on Brandon Ayuk's part. It would be silly, and then for the 49ers, like, he's your only like established guy at the wide receiver position. I think Jauan Jennings is a pretty good receiver, but we have one season of him, and after a good handful, like more likely than not, based on the long history in the NFL, if a guy in his fifth season breaks out, it's probably a one-hit wonder. I'm not saying that's Jauan Jennings. I'm just saying that over the course of the NFL, that is largely how that goes. I liked Ricky Pearsall, but is he a known quantity? I don't think so. If you're the 49ers, I don't know why you would want to get rid of Brandon Aiyuk. And if you're Brandon Aiyuk, I don't know why you would want to leave when this is the offense that you actually probably feel pretty good about rehabbing in.
I think San Francisco is looking at it this way. We'll always take, a first, second, third, fourth from somebody, a king's ransom, if they ever want to pay up for it. No, I mean, look, Adam, you said it best there. It doesn't make any sense from the injury standpoint, like you brought up, but also they just took a $31 million cap hit for the trade with Deebo Samuel, right? And $15 million more than they would have had to pay him this season. Brandon Aiyuk, if they trade him this year, something would have to not only be worked out with the injury issue of how healthy he is, but something's got to be worked out with the contract. He'd be a $40 million dead cap hit if he gets traded here. There's no way this happens. And I'll just open it up to either Chase or Chris. Do you have anything you want to add to those?
No, when you put it that way, there's a $40 million cap hit, even for a team like the 49ers, who I've said before, operate like the cap doesn't even exist. They always find a way to fit in whoever they want, whenever they want. It seems like they're really good at the cap gymnastics from an outsider's point of view. A $40 million cap hit is something nobody's going to take nobody's going to take that on for any return. I don't think so. Yeah. It's a silly prospect from that standpoint alone.
Well,
real quick,
I was thinking, go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
I was going to say real quick, teams have been cutting guys for $40 million contracts from quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins. Go down the list of guys dropping Russell Wilson last year. It's not something that doesn't happen. To me, Dan, I 100% agree with you. If the 49ers get thrown what they were being talked about last year, somebody was like, here's a 1 and a 3. John Lynch was like, yeah, I should have took those deals last year. I would take it now. That's what I think you're basically hearing is that, yes, I wish I would have took those deals that I was being offered. Now, if you offer me that now, I would take it in a heartbeat, to everybody's point. But a guy coming off major knee surgery, who's offering that, who's going to pay up for that? Sure, the 49ers would do it if somebody was actually going to buy on the other side.
Well, no, and you talk about the teams who have the cap room to even do it. I mean, you're talking about teams like New England Patriots and the Raiders and teams who have high first-round draft capital. They're not going to give up for Brandon Aiyuk. So, yeah, none of that's going to happen. Now, this one's a little more interesting because this picked up some steam today. We're recording this on a Wednesday. DK Metcalf, whether or not he's going to be traded. He came out today and said he's demanding a trade, or at least it was leaked today, because Seattle seemed to be upset that it got leaked. So it got leaked today that he has asked for a trade and that Seattle's open to the idea. Chris, I'm going to go to you first on this one, but I do want to throw this out there. This is what threw me. Clint Kubiak, in part, reportedly, why he was hired was because he had the best plan to utilize DK Metcalf next season. So it's a little hard for me to digest this, but I want to go to you for your reaction.
I don't think this is a Clint Kubiak thing, because I heard the same thing, Dan. I think this is a coaching staff would love to have DK Metcalf. What I think this is the Seattle Seahawks not wanting to pay DK Metcalf as much money as he wants to get paid. I think he looks what Jamar Chase is about to get. He wants to cash in big time. He's going to want to start his contract right around the numbers that you're seeing Justin Jefferson, because in his mind, he's going to be, why am I not one of these guys who's still one of those superstar receivers if you're going to feature me? And if these teams are all salivating about me, what I'm hearing about, and willing to pay me and want to feature me, why haven't you guys? Yeah, you're talking about coaching staffs now, but you're not paying me the money that everybody else is getting paid. I think this is DK looking at it like, I think the grass is greener and I want to get paid.
They all always want to get paid. That's the issue. I'm going to go Chase and Adam, you two up top on the screen here. If Metcalf were to be traded, Chase, what's your number one landing spot for him fantasy-wise? Adam, what's your number one spot for him fantasy-wise?
Fantasy-wise, I'm not necessarily saying this as a fan that I would want this, but there's been some talk about. Go ahead. Fantasy
and somewhat realistic. We'll go that.
Somewhat realistic. My Packers have been talked about. We know that they've, the big talk all offseason here has been, well, they need a number one guy. He would definitely be the number one guy in that room. He would be the, a big bodied receiver on the outside for them. I think he could help out Jordan Love. I think he would bring something different to that room that they haven't had, and they seem to have enough space right now to do it. Rodgers is off the books, and they can move forward without having to worry about that. The question becomes price. They're not necessarily always big on, making these kinds of big off-season acquisitions like that. They generally tend to build through the draft. So they're loath to give up draft picks. So it becomes a question of price, but I think he could help out there. And I think fantasy wise, it's probably a lateral to slight bump up move for him to go from where he was and what his role was in Seattle, which declined a bit last year with the emergence of Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think it's probably a lateral move, but a good move fantasy wise. I wouldn't be dumping him in my dynasty shares of him if he went to Green Bay. That's for sure.
Adam, what do you got?
I'll throw you a curveball. The Chargers would be incredibly interesting. Him off of play action would be disgusting. Justin Herbert and him would be disgusting. The matchup between him and Ladd is like the ideal wide receiver 1 and 2 combo that you could possibly have. And Justin Herbert's pass attempts were significantly rising the second half of the season. I think that if that trend were to continue, you add in DK Metcalf, I think it could be really, really interesting, both from an NFL perspective, probably more so from an NFL perspective, but as well for fantasy. That could easily become a team that quickly becomes very similar to those Titans offenses with A.J. Brown. We're okay. Maybe the volume isn't necessarily what you would always want, but you're getting so many touchdowns that who really cares?
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Dan, I don't know how plausible it is, but what I would love to see is Atlanta. Could you imagine Michael Penix throwing to DK Metcalf and Drake London and Kyle Pitts? Come on, like that would be one of the we'd watch every Sunday, tune in to Atlanta, watch that offense.
Throw it up, throw it up, throw it up.
Madden team right there, 99, 99, 99, huge guy. Yep. No, that would be beautiful. That would be beautiful. We're up against the clock for this segment, but I just want to give we'll dive into the fantasy impact of this throughout the offseason, but I want to give a huge shout out to the Chicago Bears. I mean,
yes,
Ben Johnson was going to do this, and they're going after it hard. 6th round pick for Jonah Jackson, and then you come back a 4th round pick for Joe Thuney. I mean, they're already attacking the one weakness they had on that offense. Everything that we thought Ben Johnson was going to bring this Bears team, I'm telling you, it's coming. They ain't done yet because they still have salary cap room. We'll see when they add a center, maybe even a tackle in the draft. We'll see that coming up. But big shout out to the Bears. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.